Hi, I'm Kevin. Uh, First and foremost, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to do a video submission instead in part of those technical problems. This is my project. Call it VirBuild, kind of just short for virtual build. Uh, yeah. So for this project, I set out to create a centralized VR-based platform for designing using Unity. And I wanted to encapsulate the entire process, ranging from using basic shapes to sort of conceptualize how the person may use the space, down to the finer detail modeling. My personal inspiration for the project kind of came from my time working in the Shanghai construction group. My job then was to use Unity or WebGL to sort of help visualize what the rest of the team was working on, which was sort of auto-generating models of buildings from the building information model, or BIM. And so I just decided to research more into that for Capstone 1. And I found that there was very few who really tried to incorporate the design process into VR instead of just sort of using it as a visualization tool, as what was sort of my job in the company. And so this sort of unventured grounds was what really drew me towards this idea. I think that the larger significance of my project is just the overall exploration of using new input systems uh, in an area where traditional methods are basically the only thing that are used, such as the keyboard and mouse for like Maya or AutoCAD or Revit, or even just pen and paper or tablets for doing sketching. And so while there are apps where you can sort of freehand draw in like the 3D space using VR, I wanted to create a system where you get to have a bit of that freedom, that sort of organic input with the controllers, but then also be able to kind of create a more rigid data set for the models, and in the future, be able to sort of port that into other programs, or really be able to make use of that data, so it's not such just a freehand sketch that's only really applicable in the system that it's currently in. And so now I'll run into sort of a live demo. And so the general workflow here sort of runs through three parts. So you sort of start with a zoning mode, and basically we can create some basic shapes here. So you can select it to see all the information, the name, position. We can also use this to really fine tune the parameters. So if we want to sort of expand this to width of 5, we can do that. And then, of course, the more sort of general input here, sort of similar to like what a 3D modeling software would look like. Just click and drag. You can also snap it to whole numbers here. And we want to move, resize, do that here too. And then rotating as well. Yeah, and the next step would be to sort of create the model uh, that would, ideally go into the zone. Uh, and so, because one model may need multiple meshes to be sort of combined together, such as in the case of like a building, you have some windows or doors, walls, all of different shapes, and so you would need to combine multiple meshes together. You can just create a new parent object, and then from there we can make a new mesh. So I have two sort of just presets pieces here, triangle and a square, but the main focus is the ability to make the freeform sort of shape. And so just make like maybe like some random pentagon shape here. Just click on the ground to add the vertices, and then there we can sort of adjust the height. You see we've got a sort of strange pentagon shape now. And from here we can sort of move back to the scene mode if we were done with the model, and then we can switch to R, which is, I sort of just call it like a refine mode, in which we ignore the zoning layer now and only work with the actual models that we want in the scene. And the tools all sort of replicate that, and so you can select this and see the information here as well. Then move it if we wanted to as well. Resize everything, and yeah. So just to briefly recap, the workflow sort of goes from zoning to building the meshes to sort of refining, editing of the scene. The system takes both the VR controllers as input for more quick and natural edits, but also the UI for more precise editing. Some key design decisions. Again, accepting the multiple inputs so that it really feels like it's part of the VR tool, but you also get that mix of precise data, and then the adding in the custom shapes. I didn't want this to just be kind of like a video game where you're just building with presets like Lego blocks almost. Unfortunately, I did have to sort of meet it halfway because of how the vertices and the triangles sort of play into how the mesh is created in Unity. And so you can sort of see a diagram in the bottom right here. For the rendered side of the plane, or like the visible side of the plane to be visible, you have to order the points in a clockwise order. And so for the bottom and top of any shape that we sort of make with this plane and then extrusion system, we can just simply link everything to the first vertex, and then just kind of go in a reverse order of the triangle. And then for the sides of the shapes, you sort of follow the same logic, and it essentially looks like the far right diagram, in which you sort of have a bunch of reverse triangles. And so with this system, we'll always know that there's going to be an even number of vertices at the bottom and an even number of vertices at the top, and that the halfway mark will always sort of be on top of the starting vertex. And so we can use this to kind of create an algorithm to create all the meshes or all the triangles in the correct order. Sort of evaluating my own project, I feel like a little bit disappointed in some ways, and maybe looking back, I was a little bit too naive in when I was making the proposal, before I really started to work on the project. And turns out there was a lot more hardships, especially with relaying input one way, but then also having the information bounce back, particularly like in the UI, as well as having multiple inputs all sort of work together and creating variables that aren't just global in the script but global in the entire project, and so you have to kind of cross-reference a lot of the you know variables and check everything multiple times. And then I ended up having to spend a lot of time sort of coming up with the way to generate the meshes, and then creating a system that would always make sure to display the meshes correctly, with the vertices and the triangles. And just unfortunate because I ended up having to spend so much time on that portion, I did not get to really do the end game stuff of the project, which was to make it very visually good looking, and then adding also in like a lot more functions just to make it look much visually nicer, such as wood texture for wood floors, or metal walls, concrete walls, these kinds of things. But given more time and whatnot, these things, of course, are not a priority over the just the overall functionality. And so, at the very least, in terms of functionality, I'm fairly pleased with myself. And then, for acknowledgements, of course, I want to give a big thanks to Stavros, my advisor. He, through our meetings, he sort of helped me guide me through a lot of the ideas, and sort of solidify the more specific concepts I had in my head, in like how I would do it. Particularly, I remember for the mesh creating parts, some things I hadn't thought about. He mentioned to me, and it sort of edit the way that I think of like how to do the project. And then for reference, I mostly just ended up using the Unity reference manual, and for certain syntax, or functions that I may not have known of before, and being able to use that system, uh, apply that system into this project. And then in some cases, for very particular errors that I couldn't figure out, or questions, I found from Google search a lot of forum posts on Stack Overflow from people with similar problems in the past, and that was also a big help. And so, yeah, thank you for listening to my presentation.